Hello, this is Andrew for CollectionDX.com, and here is my breakdown of Combiner Wars Breakdown. And much like the other Stunticon limb guys, he's your basic deluxe transformer. He's about 5.5 inches tall. And just for quick size comparison, here he is next to Motormaster and fellow Stunticon Dragstrip. So, see, they look very nice together. I'm actually going to do all the limb guys before I do a review of Mr. Motormaster. So, anyway. So, Breakdown, he's a pretty nice modernized update on the original G1 toy. He has a lot of details from the cartoon, which I never thought I'd actually see that in a physical plastic figure, like his chest details here, the particular blocky head that he had in the show, and other stuff like that. So, as far as articulation goes, he's pretty good, just your standard deluxe transformer, and a couple of things from the transformation give him a little more range of motion. Like you can see here, he's got a nice double elbow bend. He has, little ball joint in his elbows, ball jointed shoulders that just kind of get hung up a little bit just because of this little overhang here. Ball jointed head, so he can kind of look all the way around. You're all supposed to put him facing backwards for the transformation. Like all the deluxe limb guys, he does have a fully functional waist joint. The only problem here is that it actually kind of bangs into his thighs. But another thing that he has that's kind of unique is there's a little scissor joint right here. And if you pull these, you can bring this closer together, and this is actually part of his transformation. So if you do this, you can more easily get his thighs out of the way of the back there. And I actually kind of took this thing apart just so I could make sure that when you put the little scissor joint back, you actually just kind of leave it right here. It does not go up all the way. It just sort of has a little tooth right on this side that just sort of stops it from going out anymore. So for the rest of his legs, he does have a pair of thigh swivels, which are nice and tight on my figure, and also just kind of your regular single jointed knee. And you can also kind of do a bit more with his feet because they fold in for transformation, and his heel is just the spoiler of the car mode, so that moves too. So he's pretty good. He's definitely not as, appropriately just not as sleek as Dragstrip, but that's not too bad. So you can get him into some nice poses if you fiddle around with him. And his joints are nice and tight enough that if you want, you can totally have him doing a high kick like that. So let's just look at his accessories real quick. So he comes with the standard Combiner Wars hand-foot gun thing, and his is styled more like an engine, and it's actually kind of familiar looking if you know your old G1 toys. So he can either hold it in his hand, and shoot people who looks with like this weird, engine dustbuster thingy, or there is a hole on the back here where you can just stick the combiner hand-foot thingy. And we've kind of gotten some not so subtle hints that there's going to be a Sunstreaker in Combiner Wars, and suddenly, oh, okay, Breakdown's got an engine on his back with these squared off intakes, and it's like, oh, that's totally just Sunstreaker right there. So other than that, you can actually use this thing as like a little pop-up cannon on the back. So that's kind of cool that he's got some neat stuff he can do there. And his main weapon is this sword gunny thing. And you can just pop it in like this, and it's totally sword. It looks pretty nice. It's kind of a weird tech sword thing that for whatever reason has like this ribbed handle for him to grab onto it when it's in gun mode. So yeah, it's just kind of nice there. And if you want to store this thing, this is really more for vehicle mode, but the tab right here on this side actually can go into either slot on his arm there. So now he's got a blade on his arm. Alright, so that's breakdown in robot mode, let's start looking at some other modes, starting with him as an arm. So breakdown's transformation is actually fairly complex for a limb guy, and we're going to see most of that as I convert him into an arm. To start off, you're just going to flip his head around. You're going to put his arms up, just curl them up, and there's a little curved part that goes into a little divot in the forearm. Just do that. And as you bring down his shoulder assembly to bring his whole arms down to the sides of the car, it actually unlocks the top part of his body. You can see that just kind of opens that up there. And same thing on this side. So you grab his mechanical chest plate or bib thingy and just kind of flip it up. And as you're bringing it up, it's on this double hinge here, and you just want to line this part up with the edge of this. So like that. And then there's just a couple of little tabs in here that'll go into slots right there. So just move all this down. And there's the front of the car. We're going to leave it on his back for now. And you can just continue to bring his arms down to form the sides of the car. So as I mentioned before, there's kind of this scissor joint thing here, and you're just going to pull on that until these parts are down and this whole thing can come together. There's just a bunch of tabs to bring his arms together. And you're going to leave his feet and spoilers out, like in robot mode for arm mode. So all you do is kind of twist this, and you got a forearm, and just pull that out, the combiner limb joint thing. So take his hand-foot gun and just pop it in to the bottom here. Flip out the fingers, and here you go. This is breakdown as an arm. So he kind of has like the opposite problem of, or opposite issue I should say, of drag strip, where he's actually a little too short as a limb unless you keep these parts down. So I'm just going to pull out Motormaster in Menasor Torso mode so you can just see how he's all connected, how he looks all connected. So you can see he's a fairly thick limb. He does have, like, you know, full articulation. He's got a elbow swivel thanks to Breakdown's own waist. He's got an elbow joint right here, and he's got the wrist and all that, and of course the nice combiner joint. Although I found that Breakdown is kind of, because of all this blockiness here, you can sometimes get hung up on parts of Motormaster. And in fact, I think he works better as a leg, and we'll see that in a little bit. One thing that is unique on him compared to his Stunticon friends is he's actually got, because of his own waist, he's got this kind of little rotational joint right here. It's obviously a little separate from this part up here, so that's kind of neat. It's a little different. Gives you a couple of extra options what to do with him as an arm. But other than that, he's pretty standard. He looks pretty good. And I've also seen people like basically turn him into the car mode and make him like G1 arm mode. So yeah, that's kind of weird. Anyway, let's look at him as a leg. Alright, so we got arm mode. Let's turn him into a leg, which I think is the better of his two limb modes. Just pop off the combiner joint, flip these up, his feet and spoiler. And this is kind of one of those things I always thought was a little unintuitive with this toy, because you're bringing the hip joints down, but you're doing that so that you can then pop these out on their own little hinge here, and you're actually going to bring the back halves of his legs, turn them to the back half of the car mode. So you can bring them down, put them back up again. And they have these tabs that go into slots right here. There's different ways you can do this. Either you can kind of like jam them in there at an angle to get them to fit in, or what you can do is just sort of leave these up and out like this on both sides and pull them up first. Just kind of get that all aligned like that, and then the slot here will go into the tab over there. You just kind of put the whole thing back down like that. It's up to you how you do it. And you just flip this up for leg mode, And as I mentioned, he's kind of got the weird, slightly different thing going on with him than Dragstrip, who's going to help us out here for demonstrating this as a leg. Because you actually leave his spoiler in car mode, or breakdown spoiler in car mode, and Dragstrips has to be flipped up, otherwise he's not a perfectly sized limb. So anyway, he's a leg, and I think he looks a lot better like this, because he's a nice, just kind of beefy block of car that becomes a limb. And you know, he's got the whole moving joint thing here, and the only thing you have to be careful of is that like the edge right here can sometimes bang into Motormaster's own foot, and this is like in the regular configuration from a Motormaster. Other people have done weird stuff with how they position his legs to become part of Menasor. And also, if you want, you can totally use the rotational joint and then just flip this like this, and you kind of have G1 mode there. Of course, you don't have any of that the knee joint posability that you had before, but that's just there if you want something a bit more classic style. Me, I'd prefer to just have the articulation and leave it like this. So he makes a good limb. He pretty much does everything he needs to. And with that, we're going to finish off with car mode. And as you will be seeing with the rest of the Stunticons, turning Breakdown back into a leg or into a car from leg mode is pretty simple. All you do is you just bring down the combiner joint. There's this little tab up here that's going to go into the slot right there for the front of the car. And just bring that down, and you're just going to bring his front windshield down, and you can pop off the combiner thing and leave it around, off to the side for now. So yeah, this is Breakdown in car mode. Unfortunately, he's got, his wheels do spin, all of them. They're just a little tight, and you know, they're just kind of that simple plug-in connection. There's no actual pin in there, but they do move. It's just that if I'm trying to do this on my like very slick vinyl backdrop here, they don't actually spin. But I did show you they do actually work. So try that on a carpet or something else. But other than that, he's a very nice modern Lamborghini thing. Although not quite on model, so they can avoid licensing fees. He has Tampographed 15 Racing on the top there, and I wonder if that's because he came out in 2015. He's got a Decepticon symbol in the front there, and a fairly G1-esque deco. The Unite Warriors one is just a little bit more cartoony. And so, as I showed you before, you can take his gun sword thing, and you can just kind of slot it in or tab it into the side there. So that's some weapon storage right there. Or you can be silly and just stick it in the back tailpipe thing there. And now we can stab people falling behind him. And with the combiner hand-foot gun, you just stick it up on top. And there you go. Now, this obviously doesn't look quite as authentic as Sunstreaker, but you can kind of see what they're trying to do here when they're going to get around to repurposing this guy as the famous Autobot Lamborghini. So that is Breakdown in car mode. Just do a quick size comparison. Here he is alongside Motormaster and also his buddy Dragstrip. So you can kind of see he's in the middle as far as like size goes, and they look pretty good together. So yeah, Breakdown, he's not my favorite of the bunch, but he's definitely a pretty solid figure, and I'm surprised at how complex he is for just somebody who's going to end up as somebody else's limbs. So anyway, this has been Andrew from CollectionDX.com, and I will be continuing to look at the Combiner War Stunticons in the next video.